Hi everyone, and welcome to the Allplane Podcast with innovators and entrepreneurs that are transforming the aviation industry. And remember that you can find all the previous episodes of this podcast, as well as many other aviation stories, on our website, allplane.tv. That's Allplane.tv. In this episode, like in the previous one, we continue to explore the aerospace startup scene and the acceleration and investment ecosystem. So, François Chopard is our guest today, is the founder of Starburst, which is today perhaps the most active specialized player in the field of early stage finance and startup acceleration in the aerospace space, pun intended. Starburst has offices in multiple countries around the world, pretty much in every continent, from where it scouts the tech ecosystem in each region, and it holds regular and frequent pitching events, which I have had the chance to attend on occasion, in order to identify the most promising startups in aerospace and aviation, broadly defined. So it can range from software for the airline and air travel industry all the way to super niche satellite and defense technologies. We have chatted with Francois about the work they do at Starburst and also about the aerospace innovation landscape and the most promising technologies that are appearing over the horizon, from sustainable aviation to space technology. So tune in for a conversation at the very edge of the technology frontier in aerospace. Hello, Francois. How are you?
Hi, Mikhail. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for joining us this morning, your morning, because you are in California at the moment.
Yeah.
So it's a 9-hour time difference. But I was really looking forward to having this conversation because you are the founder and CEO of Starburst, which I think is one of the most fascinating projects that there are right now in the field of aerospace technology and investment. Can you tell us, for a start, a little bit about yourself? Then we can move on to talk about Starburst and the sort of projects and initiatives that you guys are backing.
No, of course. So I'm an engineer by background, by training. I started my career at Airbus for a couple of years. I had also the opportunity to cross the Atlantic and work for the US Air Force in one of their research lab upstate New York for 2 years. And it was also a great experience. And it was already for me a way to either compare or to work in both sides, both Europe and the US, and see how things were different in the aerospace industry, different or similar. But I didn't want. I liked the technology. I was very curious. I love innovation, but I didn't want to be an engineer. So I came back to France and work as a consultant in a different strategy consulting firm. During the internet bubble in 98, 99, I joined a startup that raised 8 million euro, quite successful, doing B2B. Or at that point, I was already scouting and working in the procurement area. Didn't work there very long because of crisis, 9/11, and so I came back to consulting. I started in another company 4 years later, and it was almost like the precursor of Starburst. We're a team of 15 people in Paris, and we're already scouting for innovation for large corporations. So we would get contracts from Airbus and others. They would say, okay, what can you say about the future of battery, the future of more electric aircraft, and what are the patents, who are the top universities, professors working on this subject, and what can be the future? And that was in 2005. So it was already interesting, very similar to what we are doing now. And for some reason, after 3-4 years, it was working very well, but it was not my company completely. So I stopped, redid some strategy consulting, and then really start Starburst about 8 years ago now. I mean, I left my previous company 10 years. It's going to be 10 years. But by the time, to start a new business, find the new business model, adjust a little bit. I said that Starburst was born 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm. because Starburst, and then we move, of course, to the project that you are leading. I would say it's a very interesting beast, because you do different things at the same time, but they are all connected to let's say, the cutting edge of innovation in aerospace. So just to summarize, how would you describe in a 2-line sentence Starburst? Because you are an accelerator, you also do some consulting, and you also are an investment fund, right? Or like a VC.
Yeah, and so what we do now, okay, I will do two lines. We do two things. We work with startups to get tractions and get their next round of financing, which is usually a Series A. And we help corporates understand better what's the landscape, what's happening, what are the trends, what's emerging, and what should they be careful or taking care of. That's really the two things we are doing, and then everything is related. But we ended up doing so many things, because when I started 8 years ago, I was not an investor. I didn't have a fund. And so basically I started with 10,000 euro. Wow. And so I needed to be creative in order to start the business. And the only way I could do that was by selling services. So I was, what I knew what to do, I was using my brain to support corporates, understanding what's going on, and support startups to work with the corporates. And that's really how it started. And so that's why even today we are still doing strategy consulting, because these two, the startups and the corporate, they still need to understand on a real-time basis what's going on and how can they be better. That's why we are doing that service. And then we realized that just doing that service in Paris was not enough. Large corporation, they need to understand what's going on around the globe. And startup, if we are just focusing on France or Europe, that would not be enough, because aerospace is a global market, and even these startups, very quickly they need to be global. So that's the reason why we expanded our service. That's why, like 6 years ago, I moved to LA. I found partners, and we developed our business in the US. And then with an office in Paris and LA, I thought that we need something in Asia. So I moved to Singapore for a couple of years, developed our presence in Singapore. It was long and painful, but that was necessary to be global. And then came back to France, opened an office in Munich, and then moved back to San Francisco finally. And
you're a global firm now. I've seen you have how many offices? Is it 8?
So now we have 8 different offices, and each office is a subsidiary, which is an entire company. It's just a representation. It's just not just it's a full company. So where we have a managing director, we have a couple of people. We are able to support local startups, either to invest in them or take equity and provide local services. And also we're working in an environment, aerospace and defense, where you need to be local to work with the local government.
So you're a global company, and I read you started, as you mentioned, consulting operation, and you've been, I guess, increasing more and more the investment side of your activity.
Yeah, because if you want to have more weight with the startups, if you want to have more impact, you need to be more invested than just doing services. And so either we take sweat equity, so which means that they don't pay for our service, and for us it's already a big investment, and we get equity, or we invest directly, and we've done already a couple of investments. But right now we want to do much more. So we're going to talk about this. But yeah, and at the beginning we are not taking equity. We are trying to, as we are helping them on the business development, we are taking some success fees on the contract we help them to sign. But we realized that it was not enough. Or if we really wanted to make a difference, we need to be more committed and invested, and so we needed to take equity. And so that's the shift we did about 4 years ago now, and that's how we became investors in. At the beginning, we took 12 startups, and then 15, 18, and now we're taking on average 20 startups in our late stage accelerator model every year.
And you run through the year you run a number of events, like presentations. I remember I attended one of them you did in London. So basically companies, startups come to you, they pitch, then you have a selection committee and you select a number of startups. So that's a model that's been practiced by accelerators, incubators the world over, particularly in recent years. What can you tell us about the characteristics that these startups must have? Are you investing at any stage of development, or you focus on a specific stage and size?
So it's interesting. It's a model that we developed in 2013. So already at the beginning, we were scouting startups and we were inviting them to pitch in front of our corporate partners, and our corporate partners, the one paying the retainers, would help us to pick the best, or at least they would tell us, we like this one, we like this one. We would do our mix and our recipe, and out of the 10 that would pitch, we would take 2 or 3 that we would take into our accelerator. So that's a model that we developed a long time ago. We are an industry specific, and so we use our corporate partners to help us sort the startup that they like the most, or that the more chance to be successful. And so yes, now that we are global, we have a team of at least 10 people scouting startups on a regular basis, on daily basis, which means that on average we identify 2,000 to 3,000 new startups every year, which is a huge number. And so we came with a mechanism where we sort them, we pre-select them, and we like the ones that are around their seed stage. Seed stage, they come up with already a lot of them have failed already. They're starting to have something that they can show up and demonstrate, and that's when the corporates start to be interested. And so seed stage is the right time where we can do some more efficient matchmaking between startups and corporates, and that's why we picked it.
Because you also have quite an impressive roster of partners, industrial partners. Companies like Boeing, for example, Safran, a whole range of companies that are in the industry, which I guess it adds value to the proposition as well, because many of these startups that you are selecting are in some degree dependent on these large corporates adopting this technology that they are developing, right?
Yeah, and of course, and that's also the value. We know the industry. We are connected to all the major corporates and the different governments in the US. We work a lot with NASA and the Air Force, and we are starting to engage with the Army and the Navy, which it's a bit particular in the US, but they have a checkbook, and so the military arm are able to give contract very easily to early stage startups, and that's what we are looking for too. So it's corporates and government entities that these startups are looking for.
Do you focus on specific market niches? Because you have invested in some 200 startups so far, or you have accelerated 200 startups possibly through this scheme. But it's quite diverse. So you have things like from satellites to very, very specialized technologies that go into a specific function of, let's say, a satellite, something like that, all the way to startups that are developing, for example, new propulsion technologies for commercial aviation. I had here on the podcast, for example, I had Zero Avia, which is one of the companies that I think you've been involved with. There are others that have been in the headlines recently, like Ampere, for example, and some others. So how do you categorize these startups? Are there specific market niches that you are focusing your attention on at the moment, or is aerospace in a very broadly defined way?
Yeah, so we took so aerospace, where we call that aviation, space, and defense, because it was my area of expertise, and that's how I picked it. And then inside aviation, space, and defense, you're right, it's the same industry, which means that it's the same players. If you look at Airbus, they are entering in all these different categories. Boeing is the same, so all the large corporations. Some are more defense or more aviation, but overall it's the same industry. But then when you look at the product, then they are very different. Aviation, it's more on the aircraft, the helicopters, and so here we have the eVTOL category, the cargo drones. You have the electric aircraft, hydrogen aircraft, now the supersonic. We are also tackling with the new way of addressing mobility. So the emergence of the small regional airport that are being used for smaller airlines. So we looked also at kind of certain number of new airline business model. And so that's an entire category. And then of course you can look at batteries, you can look at fuel cells, new type of sensors for sense and avoid, so LiDAR, but also 3D cameras. And then you need to look at AI, because it's key, and to some degrees machine learning and others, cybersecurity, because you don't want this product to be hacked. And so that's an entire ecosystem. The other one that is booming right now is space, from launchers to a new type of constellations. We're talking more and more about having multiple space stations, and so people working in space, manufacturing in space, refueling, and so that category, and also all this because the cost of sending stuff to space is becoming much cheaper, or it's much more flexible. You can either use SpaceX for 1/10 of the price, or Rocket Lab and have your perfect flight right for you, just putting your things in the exact orbit. So with these two, and we've been addressing these two categories. And out of the 200 startups that we have accelerated, we have equity into 60 of them, including Zero Avia, Ampere, and more. And yeah, our portfolio companies are starting to do pretty well. And so we are starting to be recognized now as a good investor or a good partner for our accelerator program, and the way we pick startups and we support them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I couldn't avoid thinking about a statement you have on your site that says the next billion startup will be in aerospace today, because just like 2-3 hours ago, we learned the news about a massive deal through a SPAC, Archer, air mobility startup that got valued at not $1, but $3.8 billion in a really eye-catching deal with United Airlines and some other large investors. So yeah, I guess that's that's a sign of how dynamic things are getting.
In 1 year, so I think Virgin Galactic was the first one to get in, to do an IPO through a SPAC, and it was just 12 months ago. Since then, we got Zipline for the cargo drone, who got valued at above 1 billion. I think Boom is around 1 billion. Rocket Lab is around 1 billion. There's a couple of SPAC that have been announced of startups that are going to be valued in the aerospace industry above 1 million. One is for constellations. Another one is Momentus, where we are part of, that is doing a third stage rocket. So yeah, in 1 year, we went from zero, or maybe SpaceX, to I would say at least 10 or 15, and that's crazy. And again, I think it's just the beginning. We are in the aerospace is not a bubble, and then we are in for at least 10 years of revolutionizing the way we move, we fly, we go to space. It's gonna be a great 10 years to come, for sure.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about this because we're at a point where there's certainly lots of activity on the, let's say, the technical side. It seems that the business models are not yet that well defined. Where do you see things going? Because I know that's a very vague question, but for example, in air mobility, you guys have a vision or have identified some potential winners when it comes to trends and where things are going, and what are the drivers of this industry going forward?
So what's exciting is that there's already product flying. If you look at Joby, even though they're not talking much, but they're already flying, doing a lot of experiments and being close to be certified. So that's the first point. As they're going to be certified in a couple of years, they will be able to operate, the first commercial flights. But of course, there's going to be a pilot. The battery are going to be heavy, and so it's going to be limited. It's going to be for high net worth individuals, and so at the beginning it's going to be a niche. But the same way the automotive industry was.
100 years ago.
Yeah. So it's not surprising, but then we might move away from battery and replace that by hydrogen. And then it's going to be cheaper. It's going to go further. We're not going to need to refuel all the time, so the downtime will be less. And then autonomy and automation will be better, and so there's not going to be a need for pilots. And so you can sense that each step will take a couple of years. So first flight, if you look at the first flight, maybe in next year or the year after, along with certification. So that's 23. And then you want to have a better propulsion system. So maybe hydrogen will be, variable through zero Avia work in 2025, and then fully autonomy will be achieved through startup like X-Wing or others, and maybe that's going to be 2027. But one thing is sure, in 10 years from now, we're going to be fully using these type of products efficiently, autonomously, and at the same time, the infrastructure, the airports or the heliport or the helipad, I don't know how we're going to call them, but we'll have developed across the city, and we'll have a better understanding. So yes, it's going to take time, but we're going to see it evolving with us. And in 10 years, for sure, it's going to be a mass product and mass market. And that's why Toyota is massively investing in this, because that could be the future of cars and of mobility.
Yes, actually, I had a chance to write an article for CNN about a year ago, focused on this fact that many car companies are actually investing in the air mobility. So you have the Toyota, Fiat, some other
Hyundai
car manufacturer. Yeah, there are quite a few, and the luxury one, Porsche, it's quite interesting how they are moving in this direction. But aren't we going to have so many things flying overhead that at some point it's going to be, you will need to start looking up just to see if there's a chance of things falling from overhead.
So no, it's a good point, but then at some point it's going to be a choice. Do you want traffic jam, and massive line of cars on highways and be stuck in traffic like you are in LA every day, or do you accept to have more things above your head and less traffic and something much smoother and less cars on the streets, more street for the pedestrian and the bicycle? At the end, it's going to be a choice, and some cities will be more advanced. So we'll see, how it goes, if it's better or not, and what are going to be the trade-off. But at some point, yes, you're going to have much more stuff above your head. But right now, you have nothing. So it's the sky is not going to become dark because of this vehicle, but for sure, you're going to have more.
Yeah. And when it comes to space, where do you see the opportunities? Because that, I must confess, it's an area I don't know that much about, but it's obvious there are many things happening as well. There's nano satellites and space travel. But for me, it's difficult to measure what are the main drivers, what are the most promising areas. What's your vision for the coming years in this space?
So
in the space.
It's interesting because space, it's one thing, but at the end, there's so many different markets that are being pursued right now. At the beginning of 2010, we were all talking about asteroid minings, and then technology was not fully ready. It was too expensive, and so it faded. But I'm sure asteroid mining will go back again, because we're going to be able to have access to these minerals not that far away for a very cheap price. Asteroid minings and bringing back this mineral to the low Earth orbit is going to be already a business. And then manufacturing in orbit, where we know that already there's a couple of products that would make sense to be manufactured in orbit, like fiber optics made in space, made a lot of progress on that.
Why so?
And so,
is it because of vacuum conditions or what?
Yeah, it's zero. It's not vacuum; it's a gravity.
Okay.
And the fact that you don't have gravity and the way the fiber crystallize, it's much more pure, and so the bandwidth of these fiber optic are 1,000 times much better. That one example. Another example, scientists have realized that when you grow skin in a zero gravity environment, it grows in many different directions. And so I'm not a biologist expert, but they say that there's some properties that they would like to explore more. And then semiconductors, I'm sure manufacturing semiconductors in space, with no gravity and hopefully no perturbation, would be great. We are talking, also on putting a lot of supercomputer in space, because you don't need to cool them. And on Earth, the curve of the energy required to cool all the computer farms is growing in an exponential way. If you put all these computers in space, as long as you have a good downlink connections, which is being worked, you can save a lot of energy on Earth. We are talking about space tourism and having hotels in space. So we don't fully understand and realize what's going to happen in space, but for sure a lot of things. And with the new SpaceX rockets, the one that that Elon is trying and crashing on a regular basis, but at some point it's not going to crash like the others, and then it's going to reduce the cost of putting stuff into space even by a factor of 10. And so in the past would cost billions, will cost a couple of dozen of millions, and so a lot of things are going to be accessible that were not only 5 years ago.
It's expected to be a monopoly of sorts, though, because all of this is going to rely on the gatekeeper is going to be the people that are able to send these cargos to the space.
And so what we are asking ourselves right now is, on the internet side, Google become a monopoly, Facebook become a monopoly, Snapchat, WhatsApp. There's been a couple of monopoly, and we are at the point where we don't know if SpaceX will become a monopoly in that sense.
A platform, and maybe we can call it a platform. Or
yeah, but at the end it's a monopoly.
Yeah.
Maybe the Chinese will develop their own monopoly, the Indians, the Europeans. But for sure, SpaceX has done things on the rate utilization, the cost of operation that nobody had succeeded in doing so, and even now nobody has a clue on even achieving what they are achieving today. So they're gonna have a monopoly for a while, and then let's see what's gonna happen.
What about you mentioned space tourism? Do you see this becoming more of a mainstream thing in the coming years? Maybe not a massive thing, but something that few thousand people can experience.
It's for sure. It's going to be a business. It's going to be a couple of $1 billion business, but it's still going to be a niche at least for the next 5 to 10 years. But it's the sum of these business that are pushing forwards and are making space more accessible. So it's a necessary business for sure. And then when you look at Virgin Galactic, what they are trying is smart. There's a much bigger business in transportation. And so using their vehicle to do Paris to New York or London to Tokyo in just a couple of hours makes more sense if they are trying to if they succeed, in achieving this cost saving to make it more affordable.
So that would be hypersonic suborbital flight between continents?
Yes, suborbital. You almost go 1 or 200 kilometers high, and then you wait for the Earth to turn beneath you, and then you go back. Yeah.
But then we have at the same time, in parallel, we have also strong pressure for technologies. I mean, not only to fly faster, but also to fly greener. What's your view here? You are invested in companies that are attempting different approaches. As you mentioned earlier, we have mentioned ZeroAvia that is investing in hydrogen. We have Ampere that has a hybrid electric power plant. Do you have a view here about what is the most promising path for decarbonization of the aviation industry?
Yeah, the key, whether it's Ampere or ZeroAvia, the key is how you manufacture, how you produce electricity. And so even if you switch everything to electricity and you still make your electricity with coal or fuel or carbon products, then it's not going to work. So we need, if we want to move away, we don't have that many solutions. Interesting about hydrogen is that we're going to be able to store energy and electricity in a more efficient way, and reuse that electricity when we need it. So then solar will be more effective if we combine solar with hydrogen manufacturing or even wind turbine with a place to store electricity that would not be expensive. The other way that we need to think about is nuclear. Everybody has buried because of Fukushima and a couple of catastrophic events. But nuclear, if you're able to manage the waste, and maybe the waste could be sent into space in one way or another. Nuclear is really the way to get out of CO2, methanes, and all the fossil fuel.
What about the biofuels and synthetic fuels? Is this an area you are also active?
Less, because biofuel, again, how do you make these fuels? If you need to plant trees or different kind of vegetables to manufacture them, we know that it's not efficient. And so it's going to be even worse than just digging into the ground and get the natural gas or the regular fuel. So all these biofuel, if they are waste of a current process, yes. But if you're trying to redevelop an entire industry, if you need to remove some forest in Amazonia to manufacture these biofuel, then it's not bio anymore. So I'm more skeptical about this, and more positive about the renaissance of the nuclear energy.
Mm-hmm. What about the infrastructure? I mean, if all these projects go ahead, that's completely going to change the way that we move around, not just from point A to point B, but also how you move to, let's say, to an airport, from the airport, from door to door. I guess that's going to require massive investment as well. Is this an area where you guys are also looking into? And what sort of infrastructure changes are we expected to see in the coming couple of decades if that panorama materializes?
Yeah, for sure, there's going to be a real estate impact, but here it's less about disruptions. Okay, yes, there's going to be changes, but it's not based on technology. So investing as a VC will not make us make these huge gap, or it's more traditional real estate investments. Of course, we would like to do so. In the in the 18th century, when Napoleon redesigned entirely Paris, the one with the map of the place and the one who knew where all the big boulevards were located, made a lot of money on the real estate because they were able to buy all the places before. Buying the right real estate, ahead of the others because of these new spaceports or heliports. There's going to be a lot of money to be made. But right now we are not real estate investors. We are not rich enough. So we'll see. It's something in the top of our mind, but we have not been able to execute that so far.
Actually, I was listening to a business podcast the other day. I don't remember which one. I will have to search it. But someone said that the car revolution in the 20th century made a lot more money, not just to the people actually doing the actual cars, but all the whole ecosystem and all the changes it generated in real estate, all the new commercial centers, hotels, restaurants, facilities that were created, the petrol stations, all the other investments that came around this technology change that was produced by the car. Obviously, the car itself also, it's going to be a factor, I guess, with all the improvements we are seeing now in electric cars, self-driving cars. That's gonna have an impact as well, and it will be linked to all this revolution we are going to see also in the air.
Yeah, that's for sure, and that's why we need to make a lot of money investing in these startups, so we'll have more capital to deploy in real estate. That's the plan.
That sounds like a great plan. Well, there might be many entrepreneurs now that might be wondering how to apply to Starburst. So where should they go, and when are the next rounds? What would you recommend?
So we have selection rounds every month, or at least once a month. So they can apply on their websites, push their company, send a presentation. That's pretty easy. What we are launching right now is we are launching early stage programs. So we realized that there was also a need for pre-seed startups, and so we are launching a program in LA called Scale. We are launching a program in Paris called Blast. We have one in Israel. It's just, from our Tel Aviv office. We launched one in Singapore called the Aviation Accelerator. And we are looking at, leveraging this local ecosystem and launching aviation, space, or defense accelerator in local cities. So space, LA is more around space. Paris is more, global.
So would you recommend that companies apply based on the geographical region they are based on, or based on the type of service or product that they are developing?
So first they need to apply based on their maturity, and then If one of our four early stage program fits into their category, they should apply that, and if not, they should apply to the closest one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Let's remind people that the website is starburst.io.
Yes.
Yeah? And I don't know is there anything else you would like to say before we wrap up this conversation?
Yeah, we need more entrepreneurs. We need more people that wants to make a difference in the aviation and space industry. So I hope that this discussion will motivate and convince more people, more successful entrepreneur in other industries to come and join us in our major revolution. There's not that many industries that are going through such a huge transformation, and aerospace is now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking that it's if things move along this curve, I think we can expect aerospace investment to go from a niche to a more of a mainstream thing, as it happens with telecoms and other industries.
The other sector that I'm really passionate about is food. There's so much things that need to be done in the food industry, so we can eat better and live better.
Very good. Actually, I must say I was once a digital food entrepreneur that I was in a previous career a few years ago. But that's also a sector that I hold very dear, and it's very interesting. Many things going on there. Well, thank you so much, François.
Thank you. Thank you, Miguel.
Your time today, and let's see what happens with all these very promising technologies that you are backing. I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure there's going to be some failures, but I'm hoping there's going to be much more wins.
For sure. So. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miguel.
Before you go, and if you like this podcast, a quick reminder that it would be absolutely great if you could please give it a rating on Apple, Spotify, or whichever platform you're using, or recommend it to a friend or whomever might be interested. Thank you very much, and see you soon.